Welcome to another Viva3D Pro video. We're going to take a quick look at Viva3D using a more sophisticated model, more complex model. This is a model that was downloaded off the internet. We'll post the source. It's a free model. It's not perfect. It has some defects, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But it is a very nice model. And as you can see, it's being rendered with environmental reflections, and I think the overall effect is quite pleasing. So basically, looking at this here, we have a typical scene that's been created very, very quickly with Viva3D Pro. You have a bump mapped floor with brick texture, some curtains which are also bump mapped in the background, and 3 lights in total, plus the Opel model car, which has bump mapped tyres, seats, reflective windows, etc. It's a very detailed model. It's about 100 megabytes in size, and if we basically click on the model here, you'll see it's got HID activation. So as we click on a particular mesh, submesh, it will be highlighted. We'll see that in the properties editor there are 479 submeshes, each one with its own material, and each of those can be set using the editor dialog here, which looks a little bit complicated, but it isn't. It's pretty simple. You've got basically the type of shader you want to have here, so you just simply can select that, and a variety of other features. One of the things that we can do is we can enable proximity activation at 154 units and activate an explosion of all of the submeshes. So it's just to enable that, and there it is. As the camera tracks back, the activation turns off, and then as the camera spins around again and comes in closer, we should have another explosion. You'll see the seat there isn't exploding because that's not actually part of this model. I had to drop in a copy of the seat because the original seat had a problem, but we'll have a quick look at that. So this is basically running on a Ryzen 7 mobile 2700U laptop, and the performance is pretty amazing, really. We're getting very high frame rate because it's rendering almost 4 million primitives with all of the reflections and shadows. So it's doing an incredible job, really. Pretty much equivalent to NVIDIA GTX 1050, or very close to that. So shift button down, stop. We can stop the scene. You see the text here at the top. As I click on things, they get highlighted, but they also show up here, the type of unit that type of node I've actually clicked. If we click the text line here, for example, we can just change that text instantly. That can also be linked to an external database, or an RSS feed, or a multicast datagram going over the network. So all of the content, including the car model itself, can be remotely controlled through external data input in real time, which is very useful if you want to create an advert and you want to have price or offer or date details in the 3D scene. Those can dynamically change from minute to minute. Okay, so that's the text there, and as you can see, we can change it, style it, spin it around. We can also make it track the camera face forward, so then wherever the camera goes, let's turn that off in the car. Enough proximity, and let's just check this face forward, and we've got to switch this face to object. Okay, let's back off a bit, center on the car, come down, and as you can see now, the text actually tracks to the camera, which can be quite useful. So that's basically a scene in Viva3D. As you can see, it's very, very easy to just drag and drop the objects around. We have a slider control for multifunction control of the different materials, mixing levels for the environmental mapping, and just about everything else you can think of: diffuse, specular, shininess, alpha, per layer, per material, manual explode control, and a variety of other controls. So what else can we do with it? Well, looking at it briefly here, let's have a look at the tires. One of the things you can do is very easily strip the unit down, so we can basically pull the unit apart to look at the interior working. We can also do multiple selection, and then actually, if I hold down the Alt key and pull off the entire wheel and place it, and then disable. So there's quite a lot of facilities for exploring models, decorating them as you like. As you can see, the detail on the back of the car here, we've got the Viva3D FPS reflecting in the material there, because the FPS, there isn't an overlay on the screen, it's actually within the scene, but it's locked to the camera. You can have overlays, but in this case it's actually tracking the camera, so it does get reflected in the environment. So that shows you some of the things you can do with the model. You can also rotate parts of the mesh for opening and closing doors. Again, the sub-meshes within the door, which we can see there, can all be selected with the shift down, so we can actually go in there and select every part of the door. And let's reset the mesh, and then we can open the door. I've actually forgotten a couple of units things there, for example, and then we should be able to let's reset that again. Shift down. We can open the door with most of the materials. I think I missed a couple there, but basically that shows the principle. So it's very easy. You've got a model, but you can manipulate it, manipulate the meshes, arrange the images exactly as you want for whatever type of presentation or content you're making. And of course, there is no rendering. It's done instantly. The elements within the scene aren't recorded and set into a file that is live content, which can dynamically update using the Viva3D Pro player. So let's have a quick look at how we actually start creating that sort of scene from scratch. Let's actually import that model from new. So let me dump all of that and save this as a new form. 3D import test 2. Reset it. And here's the car model here. You can see it's 91.8 megabytes, so it's fairly big. We'll now load that into the scene and spin it around. So that's our car model. Let's increase the size a little bit there just by setting the scale, and pull the camera back, which will help us look at some of the problems, or the one particular problem with this mesh, this model. So now we're going to allocate real-time materials control texture repeat. So now we've got 598 different materials set. Let's change that to pixel shading. Replicate that through the model as well. Turn on hit flash so that when we actually click on a part of the car, we'll actually find out what we're clicking. We'll see that, we'll get a visual recognition. Okay, let's add a light to the scene now. Let's reset the enable lighting. So there's our model. And as you can see, we've got a problem with this seat. The driver's side seat isn't illuminating. So let's have a closer look at that. Let's zoom in there a bit, and let's turn on normals. So let's have a look at the normals, because normally with lighting, if the lighting's not working correctly for any reason, it's often related to the normals. So what we're seeing here on the passenger side seat is that we're missing, that's the driver's side seat, and you've got the normals coming up and off all of the vertices correctly, but on this seat the vertices are actually inverted, so we're not going to get correct lighting. It's quite useful to be able to see that. So here's our car, and basically now this is the sort of fun bit. We can start decorating the car. For example, metallic paint, we can drag that across and start dropping that into the car. Leather, let's put some leather on the seats. Metallic plastic. So it's a pretty fast process actually decorating the model, as you can see. The learning curve for using the software is extremely short, because basically you can just double click everything, drop textures onto surfaces, or if you like, you can simply, if you know that there's a lot of materials here, for example, that you're going to have a particular color, you can just shift with the selector here enabled, select all of those materials. So it's a very quick process, and then control color mats or just color mats, and we can select a preset or whatever color we want to add onto that. So so it's very, very easy to use, which is what we were aiming at, and it's very fast, so you can run it on a fairly low-cost computer. This running on a more powerful AMD Vega or GTX 1060 and above is incredibly fast. We think that even with the GTX 1080 you'll be able to create content for 8K resolution screens, including autostereoscopic, because one of the things this will do is actually directly output your content for 3D glasses free display devices, from holographic types of projectors to autostereoscopic. We'll have a quick look at that here. So there's our model. We can immediately switch that to 2D plus depth. So this will drive the Domenco type monitors, the Wow VX Philips 3D projection screens, and of course the new 8K Domenco board for driving or just stereoscopic monitors. And we're still getting a very good frame rate. We're still getting 45 frames a second, which is still pretty smooth. And of course, not forgetting that all of the content can show time, date, news feed, price changes, any information you want to display can come in automatically in live. You don't have to recreate the content. So that's 2D plus depth. And then we've got the actual full auto stereoscopic, which is the interleaved subpixels, where we have to render up to 9 views. Now we're getting a bit of a hit. It's dropping down to 13 frames per second. If we upgraded this to something like an AMD RX 550, we'd probably get back up to about 40 frames a second, or if we upgraded it to a GTX 1060, also we'll probably get about 50-60 frames a second with the full stereoscopic direct encoding. So we've been through a number of things fairly quickly. I think it gives a good idea of the software. In addition to being software to create content, you can also record that directly out to video here with the little record button and record very high quality full HD or 4K video of your presentation, which can have multiple pages. Multiple presentations can be combined into a slideshow. In addition, it's also a complete digital signage system, so all of the player software has got controlled reboot of the PC, heartbeats from the server, error reporting, daily messages, content, playback, log, which is uploaded to the server. So we can have up to 2 servers, a standard server and a backup server, which you simply just set up here with the system, and you can then have a control panel which will actually access your network of displays, and then when you click on this you can actually see here in the window to the right what's running live on your remote 3D capable digital signage screen. So content creation, visualization, you could even create an industrial 3D mimic diagram of a chemical plant rather than just the standard 2Ds. High quality advertising, content. It's also got stereoscopic direct feed from stereo cameras, so you can capture external real world 3D directly into the 3D graphical environment in real time and then render that to an autostereoscopic monitor. It will process the depth of field. We're adding facilities to identify objects within the scene from the external world. And we've got a long way to go with all of the nice little features we're looking at adding, including speech recognition, so that when you click on an object it will come up and say Opel GT selected and clarify which material, and you'll be able to say to it pan right, pan left, and have a more interactive experience. So it's a lot of fun to use. I'm not really a graphical person. I work on the software side, and I have to say that I found it quite easy to set this scene up myself. I had to fiddle a little bit with the lighting and some background elements to give the reflection, because obviously if you've got a completely black scene there is no reflection, so you have to create an environment which will give you the type of reflections that you want. So I hope you find that interesting. Please get back to us. We put a lot of effort into creating this software. It's really we believe got a lot of potential, but it does need your feedback. So if there's anything you'd like to say, any questions, please get back to us, and thanks for listening.